And welcome, everyone, to Raiders Week. I know you totally forgot that it was Raiders Week. It is Bolts on Tap. Welcome to Social Tap San Diego. We are downtown on J Street, just outside the Park at the Park. We can see into the Park of the Park. It is actually a pretty nice day down here.
Lovely day.
A great day to have lunch alongside John Gennaro. I'm Ben Higgins. We're here every Monday at 12:30 talking Chargers football. And yesterday, of course, a 28-16 loss to the Carolina Panthers that finally, John, officially eliminated the Chargers from playoff contention.
Wait, did it really?
No, it didn't.
No, it did not.
It did not. So I thought I'd start, channel my inner Jimmy Kimmel here with an opening monologue of comedy to tell you exactly how the Chargers could still make the playoffs over the final 3 weeks of the season.
Go right ahead. Let's
Are you
hear
ready
it.
to go?
I'm 100% ready to
All right,
hear this.
I had to figure this out. I sent it out on Twitter.
How long did it take you to figure this out?
It took me about 15, 20 minutes.
Okay, that's not bad.
It took some permutations, but if you still want to hold out that 0.01% of hope, here's what needs to happen. The Chargers need to win their final 3 games over the Raiders, Browns, and Chiefs. The Denver Broncos must lose their final 3 games. The Baltimore Ravens must lose their final 4 games, including tonight, or the Pittsburgh Steelers have to lose all their remaining games, one or the other. The Miami Dolphins have to lose all 3 of their remaining games, and the Buffalo Bills have to win exactly 2 out of their 3 remaining games to finish tied at 8-8 with the Miami Dolphins to knock them out of the AFC East tiebreaker before going to a Chargers tiebreaker at 8-8. Also, hang on, we need the Tennessee Titans to lose 2 of their 3 remaining games.
Okay.
Because they can do no better than 8-8 as well. The Indianapolis Colts must lose 2 of their 3 remaining games. Cincinnati has to lose at least 1 game. And if all of that happened, the Chargers would win a tiebreaker at 8-8 and go to the playoffs. Are you excited now?
It's not going to happen.
No, it's not. It's not going to happen. That's like a minimum 17-team parlay.
Yes.
That would have to hit for the Chargers to go to the playoffs.
Put $1 on it, because if it hits, you're winning big. But be prepared to part ways with that dollar. The only part of that seems likely is the Dolphins winning their last 3 games, because it looks like Ryan Tannehill tore his ACL.
Well, the Broncos have very tough matchups the last 3 weeks. The Patriots, Chiefs, and Raiders over their last 3. The crazy thing is, had the Chargers won yesterday...
By the way, you just pointed out that the Broncos may not win against the Chiefs and Raiders, but didn't point out that the Chargers may not win against the Chiefs and Raiders.
That's the big reason why it's not going to happen either. But the crazy thing is, had the Chargers won yesterday with the Broncos losing to the Titans and Ryan Tannehill getting hurt, you could subtract 1 from all of those things that needed to happen, and we could be having a legitimate discussion right now about Chargers playoff chances with 3 weeks to go if they had won the game yesterday. Of course, they didn't, and the way they didn't, I think, is significant, John, because unlike the other 7 losses the Chargers have suffered this season, in which, for the most part, they've been competitive throughout the game, they've led in the second half of most of their losses this year, they just came out flat, not ready to play, falling behind 23-0 to the Carolina Panthers. It was one of the least interesting, most click-off worthy games that the Chargers have played in a long time.
Do you know how many points were scored in the fourth quarter?
Well, I know at least 2.
Only 2.
2.
2 points in the fourth quarter. I would like to point out, this is how bad and ugly this game was. I would like to point out Cam Newton's stat line. 10 for 27, 160 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Cam Newton, for him, it's a really bad game. It's a really bad game. Jonathan Stewart rushed 24 times for 66 yards. That's a bad game. No one on Carolina actually had a good game, and they... How terrible the Chargers were. The Panthers didn't even have to be good to crush them.
All right, Ted, this is an interactive program, so if you want to comment along on Facebook, we're already getting them right away. It didn't take very long. Chargers looking good to keep Cleveland from 0-16. Worst first half by the Chargers ever. Fire McCoy. Great win for my Carolina Panthers. Chargers don't have a good enough quarterback to beat the Raiders. Well, let's start there, John.
Okay.
Chargers don't have a good enough quarterback to beat the Raiders. Phillip Rivers had another tough day. He has certainly, I don't know if you want to say, been his own worst enemy in recent weeks. He has pulled the Chargers down in recent weeks, but he's thrown some critical interceptions. He's made some really bad decisions. And the Chargers have now turned the ball over 30 times this year, more than any other team in football. I couldn't tell you one successful NFL team in past history that has led the league in turnovers.
And that's because I don't think there is one.
Right.
Except maybe the Saints a few years back, I think led the league in turnovers with a winning record. Drew Brees threw a ton of interceptions. This season, in particularly this game, I don't really blame Phillip Rivers for throwing the interceptions that he threw. Now, the fumbles are a problem, but the fumbles have always been a problem when Phillip Rivers gets sacked. But the interceptions, to me, seemed like Phillip Rivers knew he had to take a chance. You know, you're not going to win the game without taking a risk, right? And Phillip Rivers knew he had to take a risk and threw the ball up a few times, and one of those times it worked out, and 2 or 3 of those times it didn't work out. And at the end of the day, the Chargers lost, but he gave them a chance to win. I mean, at the end of the game, they had a chance to win, right? And they were only there because the risks that Phillip Rivers was taking. That being said, winning franchises, having a quarterback good enough to beat the Oakland Raiders. Phillip Rivers is not an elite quarterback. He's not. Look.
How do you not be an elite quarterback yet be in the top 10 all-time now in several categories like touchdowns and yards and moving up the list? Chargers all-time franchise leader in both categories, passed Dan Fouts earlier this season. How can all of those things be true
because
and you not be an elite quarterback?
He's a great quarterback. He is. He's a great quarterback. But he's had around him a Hall of Fame tight end, a Hall of Fame running back, a pretty good line for the majority of his career, some very good wide receivers to throw to for much of his career. Phillip Rivers is a great quarterback. I'd say almost an incredible quarterback. But there's really only been 5, 6, 7 elite quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. The issue is, in the last...
Okay, your standards are pretty incredibly high if there's only been 5 or 6 elite quarterbacks in the history of the NFL.
But the issue is there's like 3 in the last couple of years. You have Brady, you have Peyton Manning, and you have Aaron Rodgers. All 3 of those guys can win games on their own. They literally don't need the rest of the team to be anywhere near above average, and they will drag you to the playoffs. Phillip Rivers is not that guy. He needs above average talent around him, and it will make him better. And he'll lead you to the playoffs. He's a very good leader, and he'll take advantage of opportunities that are put in front of him. But he's not going to drag the Chargers to the playoffs on his own, and it's time for them to stop expecting him to do that.
Well, I will say this. Phillip Rivers admitted yesterday after the game that he may have finally started pressing a little bit. He denied that it happened in the 4-interception fourth quarter against Miami. He's denied that it happens in other games where he struggled against Tampa Bay when he had a late interception that was very costly. But yesterday he said, yeah, maybe I started pressing a little bit. But, and there was a but here, he said, I don't want to just lose 35-3 because there's nothing available out there and I have to throw the ball away. He does have a good point. If your receivers are never open, and you call passing plays, you have 2 choices. You can take a sack, you can throw the ball away, or you have a third choice, which is to try to force something in there. None of them are good options,
right?
Especially when you're behind by 23 points. None of them are going to help you win the game. The only one that can possibly help you win the game is forcing the ball in there and hoping you get lucky and someone makes a play. More often than not, it's not going to happen, and you're going to look really bad when you throw a whole bunch of interceptions and the game gets out of control. So I do understand Phillip Rivers' logic there, that you can't simply do nothing and win the game that way.
Right, and that's on his own. So he had to try.
Makes sense. All right. Mike McCoy also, I think, his status may have changed a little bit with yesterday's game as well. Because to me, the Chargers finally, for the first time really all season, didn't really come out ready to play. Whether it was emotionally ready or strategically ready throughout the week, the Carolina Panthers came right thought, and I don't know if you remember this play, John, but I thought the tone for the game was set, and maybe you could have even read the tea leaves at this point. It was early on. I think it was still 0-0, and it was the drive where the Panthers got their first field goal, but it was 3rd and 1, and Cam Newton went with the quarterback sneak, and the Chargers stuffed it.
Yeah.
They stopped it on 3rd and 1. He got nothing behind the line of scrimmage. But the Carolina Panthers kept playing. They kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and the Chargers stopped playing. And when that happened, they eventually pushed Cam Newton forward about 5 yards to get the first down. And when I saw that, I said, you know what? One team has come determined to give it their all and win the game. The other is going out, maybe putting in an effort, but is also just running through some of the motions and is not playing as hard as the other team. And that's when I thought, this is going to get bad.
You nailed it right there when you said one team was not playing as hard as the other team. Throughout the entire game, the Chargers were out hustled, gave less effort than the Carolina Panthers. I mean, the Panthers were in a worse situation. Like you said, the Chargers win that game, they're in the hunt for the playoffs. The Panthers have essentially missed that boat. Their season is essentially over before the game started. And they came out, their hair on fire, ready to make a statement. And the Chargers, it seemed like they went in, I don't want to say they went in overconfident or they went in cocky. It just went in like they thought that the Panthers were going to lie down for them, and they didn't.
All right. Do you think, though, that Mike McCoy's status changed in that game? Because I said last week, and I really got the feeling around Chargers Park, that Mike McCoy was expected to be back, whether he was getting an extension or just coming out for the final year of his contract next year, that the Chargers weren't ready to make a head coaching change. And now it's starting to feel a little bit like maybe yesterday's game changed the narrative a little bit. And perhaps Tom Telesco and John Spanos are at least considering now that Mike McCoy might not be the right guy for next season, and he could still be coaching for his job these last 3 weeks. Did that change anything in your mind? I know you say it shouldn't, because you want to see the Chargers tank and lose and get a better draft pick.
No. Mike McCoy coached for his job the last 2 seasons. And you know what they've done in the last 33 games? 10-23. He lost. He coached for his job, and he lost. The idea that he still has a chance to win an extension and continue coaching the San Diego Chargers is completely and totally absurd. Mike McCoy does not deserve an extension. He does not deserve to be the coach of the San Diego Chargers. You said this a year ago. You said it on 10 News a year ago. Mike McCoy should not be the head coach of the San Diego Chargers. He's done nothing to earn it or deserve it or convince us that he can coach a winning football team, much less a team that could potentially get into the playoffs, win playoff games, and go to the Super Bowl.
I'm not necessarily saying my opinion's changed. My opinion hasn't changed since last year.
Right.
I will let y'all know when I rescind my call for Mike McCoy's job. It hasn't happened yet. Still in effect from a year ago when it happened. I'm just wondering whether you think the Chargers might be changing their mind on a coach they thought, dealt with the injuries pretty well, gave his team chances to win despite being outmanned and outgunned for most of the season, yet couldn't do it yesterday. Now, to be fair, he's just getting more and more outgunned as the season goes on, as they continue losing player after player after player. And Melvin Gordon going down in yesterday's game in the first quarter was a huge blow. I mean, huge blow. Last week we talked about the fact that Melvin Gordon was the only legitimate option out there that it looked offensively for Phillip Rivers, in the passing game and the running game. Without him, we said last week, the Chargers would have been able to do nothing against the Tampa Bay Bucs. Well, we got to see what a Chargers offense without Melvin Gordon looked like yesterday in Carolina, and guess what?
Terrible.
It could do nothing without Melvin Gordon on the field.
If you're asking me whether or not I think these last 3 games could change the mind of John Spanos and Tom Telesco and change it to, Mike McCoy should be let go, I don't know. I can't get in their heads. At this point, if they still think it's a good idea right now, if they thought last week it was a good idea to offer Mike McCoy an extension, I don't know what he can do to change their mind about that, short of the entire locker room, including Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates, turns on him, goes public, and says, this guy stinks, we want him gone.
Ironically, getting a contract extension no longer seems to be the job security that it once was, because Jeff Fisher, while it was actually negotiated much earlier in the season, had his contract extension announced, I think, 8 days ago by the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah.
And he was fired this morning.
Yes, he was.
After a dismal 42-14 loss to the Atlanta Falcons, which I think generated the stat of the season in the NFL, and that is the Atlanta Falcons scored 6 touchdowns in Los Angeles yesterday. The Los Angeles Rams have also scored 6 touchdowns in Los Angeles all season long. So that was it. Stan Kroenke pulled the plug on Jeff Fisher 13 games into their first season in Los Angeles. I don't think they've named an interim coach, or hadn't as soon as we started the show today. But presumably they'll be looking for a very splashy hire next year to take over the reins for Jeff Fisher in year 2 in Los Angeles. And if the Chargers do fire Mike McCoy, whether or not they're here or trying to share LA with the Rams, they will be competing for a head coach against another team in their backyard.
A team with bottomless pockets.
Right.
A team that could literally pay a head coach, $100 million a year and still afford it. So the Chargers, if they move to LA and they're looking for a head coach, are just going to get the leftovers of whomever the Rams do not want.
We are at Social Tap San Diego. It is 12:45. You can come on down and join us for lunch. Absolutely fantastic menu. It really has a little bit of something for everyone. The bowls, the salads, the tacos, the burgers, all fantastic. Monday, you can always get the burger and beer Monday night special. $10 gets you the burger and the beer. And
probably with some fries.
Great place to watch Monday night. Good Monday night football game tonight, too.
Great one.
Ravens and Patriots.
Yep.
So important, in fact, that the Ravens, if they win, it would bump 4 of the seeds in the AFC. Playoff chase right now. It would bump the Broncos out of the playoffs entirely if the Ravens won, and 3 other teams would change positions based on a Ravens victory tonight. So a lot of teams out there cheering for the Patriots to win tonight, to hold on to their positions, because that would keep Pittsburgh as the leader in the AFC North and would keep Baltimore out of the playoff picture. If Baltimore wins, they'll be the leaders in the AFC North, and Pittsburgh will suddenly be the 6th seed wild card team at 8-5, ahead of both the Broncos and the Dolphins at 8-5 in what is shaping up as a very crazy finish in the AFC.
Boy, it must be fun to root for a playoff team. Must be fun.
So that's Monday night Social Tap, either downtown or the new location on Art Street near San Diego State, El Cajon Boulevard. Check that out as well. We got a holiday party later this week out there, so looking forward to checking out the new location. Some more comments here. Chris wants to know any updates on the injuries. Mentioned Melvin Gordon going down with a hip injury. It didn't look good.
Yeah.
He was carted off in the first quarter. So sad. We joked on our Squadcast podcast last week about arbitrary numbers, 1,000 yards. Does it really mean anything in the big scheme of things? Well, it's a milestone for a running back. It is a generally accepted milestone, and Melvin Gordon was 3 yards away from that milestone when he got hurt yesterday. Does it mean his 997-yard season is no good and a 1,000-yard season would have been great? No, of course not.
I thought to myself this morning, if let's say he struggles with injuries going forward in his career, or they add another running back and they platoon him, if this was the only shot that he ever gets at 1,000 yards, like 5 years from now, people are going, man, he's been in the league 5 years, never even ran for 1,000 yards. That game against the Panthers is just going to haunt him.
Can't they arrange for like a garbage time carry in one of their last 3 games where they just hand him the ball? Tell the defense, he'll just go down after 3 yards. We'll give you 3 on another play.
Even with his bad hip, so Phillip Rivers is pushing him in a wheelchair for 4 yards.
Get him his 1,000 yards.
4 yards, and then they just tip him over.
So, but there was some optimism in the locker room after the game. We have not heard from Coach Mike McCoy, who is not that forthcoming with injury news to begin with, but he'll speak later today about the status of Melvin Gordon. But there was optimism. Phillip Rivers used the word something like, glad he's okay. Not that means he'll play again this season, but It does sound like it's not some, career-threatening or gigantic injury that's going to require surgery and months of rehab.
Good.
It does seem like it's at least something a little more manageable. As for Joey Bosa, the other big injury, who, of course, even when something good happened to the Chargers yesterday, it was bad. Joey Bosa sacking Cam Newton, but in the process suffering a neck injury. I don't know, it looked like one of those stinger-type injuries where your neck kind of gets squashed back into your body a little bit.
Yeah.
Very painful. Certainly serious because it often comes with a concussion. Now, they seem to rule out the possibility of concussion during the game, and Joey Bosa, at least at last check, was not in the concussion protocol for the NFL. So it may just be that neck injury he suffered, and hopefully not something long-term and consequential for him as well. So hopefully the Chargers, dodged something worse on the injury front yesterday, but they did have to play that at least most of the game without 2 of their remaining stars that they had left.
Yeah, I was thinking this morning about young stars on the Chargers And I started naming them off in my head. Obviously, you start with Bosa. Melvin Gordon's there. Both those guys left yesterday's game with injury. Jason Verrett hasn't played since very early in the season. Keenan Allen hasn't played at all this season. When you look at the young stars, you can see why Kevin Acee wrote a story about the potential of the 2017 Chargers. They do have a lot of young, talented players. Unfortunately, some of those players are injury prone. At this point, I think it's maybe a little too early to call Melvin Gordon injury prone. It's definitely too early to call Joey Bosa injury prone, but it's not for Verrett and it's not for Keenan Allen. So this has been one of the things that you have to look at with Tom Telesco. The guys he's signing, yes, they're talented. Yes, it appears he's getting great value with his draft picks, but is there a reason these guys are available in the second, third round? Are they injury prone?
All right, we started the discussion on injuries, talking about how Mike McCoy wasn't working with a full deck, but people on Facebook seem to be interested with the idea of who might replace Mike McCoy if the Chargers did decide to make a move.
I see some people calling for Rex Ryan, who is someone that I tweeted about this morning, and I said if the Chargers wanted to do the move to Los Angeles right, they would fire Mike McCoy and hire Rex Ryan, because Rex Ryan, say what you want about him as a coach, he's a star. Rex Ryan is a star. And you make that guy your head coach in Los Angeles, he's going to get a lot of media coverage. The media's going to love him because he's going to be sitting there ready with quotes and fun. It's not going to excuse if the team is bad, but it's certainly going to buy them some time and maybe steal some fans away from the Rams.
Well, the Buffalo Bills have not been awful, considering, they don't have an elite quarterback in Buffalo. They've managed to, tread water. They were on the outskirts of the playoff discussion, at least until last week or so. If they do hire Rex Ryan, I think you could do worse. If you're the Chargers. Like Jeff Fisher, for instance. He is no longer an option for the Chargers, I would say, after getting fired by the Rams. You can't take one Southern California coach who was a failure and immediately replace Mike McCoy with him. You can't sell that to anyone.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure you can't sell that to anyone.
Well, that never kept.
You can try to do anything.
Never kept the Chargers from trying to do something like that in the past.
Or you can go with the assistant route, like they did with Mike McCoy, and look for an established coordinator, an up-and-coming youngster. We've talked about Josh McDaniels in the past, who's revitalized himself in New England, but likely will be looking for more money and a bigger opportunity than the Chargers would provide. Los Angeles, I think, with Phillip Rivers, would give Josh McDaniels a great chance to show what he can do on a big stage if they did move, or even if they stayed here. But he's going to want to have more control, generally, than the Chargers are willing to give a head coach.
And he has said...
But wouldn't Rex Ryan as well, or is he tainted by being fired twice that he would have to take what he would get?
He might have to take what he can get. Josh McDaniels has said publicly over the last few years that the only way that he would leave his job as the offensive coordinator with the New England Patriots is if he got an opportunity where he had complete control, where he's essentially the GM, the president of football operations, and the head coach, and he's not answering to anyone except maybe the owner. And the Chargers are not that. He would have to answer to Tom Telesco. He would have to answer to John Spanos. I don't think that no matter what type of money the Chargers would be willing to throw at him, I don't think he'd be willing to take the job. The other hot head coaching name this offseason, I think it's going to be Kyle Shanahan. Offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons, previously offensive coordinator for the Washington Redskins.
Son of former Broncos and Redskins coach Mike Shanahan.
Yeah, absolutely. He would be a guy, I don't know his thought on, organizationally and what he's looking for in a team, but he would be the first guy, if I was Chargers, that I would call. But I don't know, that's never really been the speed of the Chargers before. They tend to go with the bargain basement option and not, one of the top three guys.
John Gennaro, Ben Higgins with you, Bolts on Tap from 10 News. In our last few minutes, and I want to thank everyone who's sticking around here. I see we got a lot of people still streaming along on Facebook, and you can comment with us. I want to talk about a couple of relocation nuggets just from this morning, because there seems to be new little, not scoops, but many scooplets every morning. And then we can talk about Raiders Week the last couple of minutes.
Okay.
But I thought there was a couple of interesting tweets this morning. First, from Jason Cole, who's been covering this story for Bleacher Report for the past couple of years. He just threw this out this morning. Note on Chargers' possible move. Private polling in San Diego shows less voter support for a possible stadium plan in Mission Valley than for the failed downtown plan. My first reaction to that was, that's just not possibly true. And I know the Chargers have done private polling, but I tell you this. I don't know much for sure about this Chargers Stadium saga. If there's one thing I could tell you I'm pretty certain of, Chargers fans in general and San Diegans in general prefer Mission Valley over downtown.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people like downtown. They like the idea of the convention center expansion and bringing it all down here.
Yeah.
But when you get the diehard tailgaters and the location already there, to me, there's no one who likes downtown who would say, but I wouldn't do Mission Valley, other than a couple of people from San Diego State who really want to save Mission Valley for a new Aztec Stadium. It really has been very leaning toward Mission Valley in everything I've heard over the last couple of years. So I don't know what kind of question had to be asked that would get less than a presumably 43% that the downtown vote got.
Yeah.
Is that the number we're working with? But to me, that's a disingenuous poll number that was reported by Jason Cole.
Well, okay, number one, since I've been following this story very closely over the last couple years now, Jason Cole is someone who, while I admire him as a journalist, I think he's a pretty good writer, he's been wrong about almost everything. Jason Cole said the Chargers and Raiders would get Carson, Inglewood wouldn't happen. Once Inglewood happened and the Chargers were granted, the first opportunity to go there, he said the Raiders would be moving to San Diego. Jason Cole's been wrong about everything. And you have to question the source. My guess is the source are the San Diego Chargers. Because who else could it possibly be? You said the Chargers are doing.
Well, no one else is doing private polls other than the Chargers.
Just the Chargers, and we know the Chargers don't want to go to Mission Valley. They want to go to downtown. So the Chargers could just be making up poll numbers and giving it to Jason Cole because they know Jason Cole doesn't care about the validity of a story. He'll just print it.
Okay, so fair enough, and that brings me what I think is the more interesting two tweets, and that is because they are from Sam Farmer from the Los Angeles Times.
Reputable guy.
Who has also covered this story, has written a lot less about it, but what struck me the most about Sam Farmer is that when we were all at those meetings in Houston, scrambling for scoops, talking with owners, texting everyone we knew behind the scenes. And I got a little scoop, and everyone got a scoop. The big news out of the owners' meeting, the guy who obviously had at least one or two key owners inside the meeting texting him like immediately what was happening, was Sam Farmer. He broke the Inglewood news first that they had won the vote. It was all right there. So he is obviously extremely well connected. His tweets this morning were very interesting. Sam tweeted, some reporters using the same barring a miracle phrase regarding a potential Chargers move to L.A. I believe more dominoes to fall, though. We'll see. And then he followed that up. I think the NFL is aware the Los Angeles engine could be quickly flooded by relocated teams. So basically what he's saying is that
there may not be enough.
They're trying to turn the engine on the Rams.
Yeah.
It's sputtering a little bit.
Yeah.
It's coughing. It's kind of humming a bit to life, but not, purring and revving. You throw the Chargers in there and a whole other tank of gasoline, all of a sudden everything just kind of fizzles out with an overblown and oversaturated market of NFL teams. I think that's the point Sam is trying to make. And someone
it's a good point.
Is leaning him that way, I would say, because he is very well connected in the NFL.
It's a good point. I know we're wrapping up, but I do want to help promote the station I work for, the Mighty 1090, because I saw 10 minutes ago while we were doing this, Dan Cilio tweeted out, tomorrow at 7 a.m., he will have breaking news on a new Chargers stadium plan in San Diego.
All right. I'm all ears for that. Either way, though, it is Raiders Week, as I started the show with. And remember when Raiders Week was like a holiday in San Diego?
A huge
Marty
deal.
Schottenheimer really made it a big deal. I mean, the second the game was over the previous Sunday, everything was Raiders Week. It was like college football rivalry week. He made it into something special. That kind of died with Norv Turner, even less so with Mike McCoy now that the Chargers get their butts handed to them by the Raiders on a regular basis.
Yep.
I'm worried about this Sunday's game. First of all, I'm hearing estimates, 75% silver and black at the Q.
That's about right.
Maybe more.
That's about right.
It's going to be a Raiders home game, basically. Don't blame the Chargers fans. Your team is not promising to stay. They're not that good. The Raiders are having a great season. They already, even when they're bad, they fill the Q pretty well with silver and black. So it's going to be kind of a road feeling home game for the Chargers. And the Raiders are good. If the Chargers come out with the effort they did against the Carolina Panthers, they're going to get smoked by the Raiders this week. Let's see what kind of pride they can muster. For me, that's the telling. Care about playing. I know you're all pros. They're all the same. 16 games. We treat them all exactly the same. Your fans care more about this game maybe than the other games this season. Can you do something for them this week and show them that you can be competitive, maybe even pull off a little surprise win?
Well, for me, this game is offense versus offense. The Chargers' offense is not good enough to slow down or stop the Raiders' offense. The Raiders' defense is not good enough to slow down or stop the Chargers' offense, I think. But what gives me pause there is watching the Chargers' offense this week. Melvin Gordon may be fine, but that still might mean he misses a week or he's not 100% because of his hip. Tyrell Williams is either not as good as we hoped or fighting through some sort of injury. The jump balls, the 50-50 balls, not his specialty. Dontrell Inman seems to come and go. Can you name who the third wide receiver is?
Is Jeremy Butler or someone?
Yeah, right?
I don't know.
Isaiah Burst, some other guy you've never heard of. Antonio Gates is fine, although
someone tweeted, what is Gates chopped liver?
Gates.
Some people like chopped liver, but he's not Antonio Gates anymore.
No, he's not. And as the season goes on, he's taking a little bit more wear and tear. Hunter Henry is fine, but to me, without Melvin Gordon at 100%, I don't see how the Chargers score more than 30 points, and I don't see how they can hold the Raiders under 30.
It'll be interesting to see how high scoring it gets, how loud it gets, and how many Raiders fans invade the queue next week. We will be back next Monday at 12:30 live here at Social Tap San Diego. For John Gennaro, I'm Ben Higgins. Thanks for joining us on another edition of Bolts on Tap from 10 News, and have a great rest of your Monday.